Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? Happy Easter. How was your morning so far? Still alive, that's good. It's always a good starting point. Lindley, that's always a good starting point. Good morning, Michael. How are you doing? Enjoying the weather? Cool. All right, Lindley, Bubbles, do you want to just change your settings to all panelists? If you scroll down, you'll see all panelists and the drop in the chat box, or all panelist attendees. That means everyone can chat to everyone else. So, hi Bubbles, thank you. Cool, excellent. Happy Easter. So who's had Easter eggs so far? Who has had Easter eggs so far? I haven't. No Easter eggs here. A non-essential item. Oh, I've seen plenty. I've seen plenty of them in the shops though, Paul. I haven't had one either. Bit of a bummer. Anyway. Right. Okay. So how's everybody doing? Paul, oh my God, absolutely. I agree. Totally. Chocolate is probably the most essential item. I would eat chocolate before anything else. Happy Easter, bacon and eggs for brunch. Very nice. Very nice. How's the weather in South Africa? You guys coming in from South Africa, Lindley, Cheryl, how's it going in South Africa? How's the weather? It's beautiful here in the UK. I think it's still nicer in Sydney in Australia, isn't it? Windy. Well, when is it not windy in PE? Cool. Excellent. So how is everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Cold and wet. Ooh. So Paul and Pearl, you're both in Melbourne. Cool. Cold and wet and wintry. I suppose it's April now. Yeah, we're getting quite wet, wintry. All right. Okay. How's everything going for everybody? How was your week? How's everything unfolding? How is everything? Strange week. You've been ill, Kevin, haven't you? How are you guys feeling now? How are you feeling now? Anybody else been ill or rough? For me, it's been really, really busy. On the mend. Wouldn't have wanted it to be any worse. No, I can imagine. Yeah. Plenty to do. Yeah, there is plenty to do. I'm finding myself more busy. I actually launched a wee business yesterday. You made to make 9% of your trades. That's brilliant, Michael. Well done. That was last week. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You didn't come to the webinar yesterday, the tech intensive feedback, did you? That is actually absolutely brilliant, Michael. You're doing really well. You're doing so well. That's brilliant. So, who read the book? Who's read this book? Anybody read this book? Okay. All right, Michael, the recording will be up because we went through a couple of your trades too. So the recording will be up later on today. Amazon cancelled your order. Shit. And Bubbles, yeah, that's good going. You hadn't read it last night. Okay, so you're still on it. Mostly, I could. Excellent. So Pearl, you did. It's on my list. Yesterday's webinar was the tech intensive. You on the tech intensive, Paul? Because you should have been on it if you're on it. Read it 10 years ago. So Chris, you read it 10 years ago. Anthony, 15, 20 years. Listened on audio. I was awake until 2 a.m. Well, it's one of those books that you would actually stay awake till to read. You could just read it in one sitting. Okay, yeah. I'm not a big one for books on audio, Paul. So I much rather read, and I also don't really like books on Kindle. I prefer the real deal. That's what I prefer. It's not that, yeah. What I started doing was, if I could speed it up 2 times, if I listen it to its normal pace, I can't. My mind just goes. If I speed it up to 2 times at speed, then it keeps me interested. But it's hard work, all right? Because you're going to actually have to work twice as hard. Yeah, it's hard work. Whereas I prefer to, and also I like to make notes. I scribble on books in pencil. I always scribble on books in pencil. So, yeah, definitely. I am definitely more kinesthetic visual than audio, but there's no doubt about that. The same with you, cool. They do cool, but I don't think a book has properly matured until it has a whole lot of scribbles on it. So I take pride in scribbling on my books. I really do. So much prefer the real book. Yeah. All right. So does anyone want to come on and tell me, chat about what they picked up from the book? Because there's a few things I want to talk about. Because I don't know which version of the book you read. This one I like because the first bit of it is, I would call it a précis of Viktor Frankl's experience in the concentration camp. Yeah, well, that's what he calls it, experiences in the concentration camp. So what I would actually say, it's a précis. It's obviously not the full experience. And the next one is logotherapy in a nutshell. Now, logotherapy is essentially what I always talk about. It's exactly what I talk about, logotherapy. Meaning it's the meaning you apply to situations and experiences, but it's also the bigger purpose, the meaning you apply, but also the meaning of your life, and how we get to that purpose, or how we get to that to the vision of what it is we are here for. There is no one meaning to life. And that's pretty much is what logotherapy is all about. It's as individual as one's fingerprints, okay? And it's about our application of what that meaning is. So that's why I particularly like this book, is it goes into, and it's a very high level précis of logotherapy, which I think, as far as I know, is his Viktor Franklin's. It's his body of work, logotherapy. Well, no, it's not his body of work. I mean, the whole concept of logos goes right back to Plato days, as well as a number of the different Greek philosophers. But it's information that he has synthesized. And I think the word logotherapy is what he created. I think there's a logotherapy information logotherapy institution or something like that as well. So that's why I like this one. So anyway, I'll stop rabbiting. Anyone would like to come on and share their feeling about it, and how more important so Linley, is that a book? Logotherapy is a okay, so logotherapy is as a practice is can be likened to maybe psychotherapy in a way. What psychotherapy typically does is it analyzes, it allows you to run stories of past experiences, and it allows you. So one of the ways in which Viktor Frankl speaks about psychotherapy is that he says it allows you, the therapist will speak to the patient and allow the patient to tell stories that are uncomfortable and unpleasant, or around about experiences they've had, and allow them to run stories. And that's what, so that's with a view to getting it out there and hopefully dealing with it, right? Logotherapy, on the other hand, doesn't go from that perspective. What logotherapy does is the logotherapist would actually speak to the patient, telling the patient things that he or she doesn't really want to hear. Okay, so it's bringing the patient on a journey to look at their perceptions of what they may have experienced from a different perspective, and also from a different perspective, not to run the story and to start looking at applying a different meaning to it. But more than that, more important than that, is not so much retrospective, it's more about what's looking future. What is the greater meaning of your life? What's the greater meaning that you want to apply to your life, and how you can use that to empower you going forward. It's exactly what I always actually talk about. So logotherapy is a school of thought. Rather than the book, I would imagine there are dozens of books on logotherapy, because he would have started this, I think, in 1950s. The concept in the 1950s, he would have started the concept of, or coined the phrase logotherapy. I think it was in the 50s. So since then, there would be a lot of different books on it. He was a psychiatrist, and many other things. So so essentially this is interesting, where logotherapy was birthed is essentially his version of existential analysis. Existential analysis is so important, and the whole concept of existential existence, existential vacuum, all those constructs which rule our life, we are very wise to understand, because that is what drives us. Okay, anyway, I'm going maybe just a bit too deep. That drives everything we do. It drives it drives the meaning we apply to things, and how we respond, how we allow beliefs to run our subconscious mind and our conscious reality, and the level of fulfillment we have, and also the level of escapism we look for, as well as our endeavor for to run towards pleasure and away from challenge. So that's essentially what existential, the whole topic of existential existence refers to, if that makes sense. Okay, is anyone who wants to come on and chat about what they got out of the book, out of what, not necessarily the actual logotherapy part of it, but also more from his perspective, how he dealt with what he was going through in the concentration camps. Any takers? Anybody? Surely you don't want to just listen to me rambling on. Come on. Somebody must want to say something. Or even read a piece of it that... Bubbles, do you want to say something? I see you've raised a hand. Can I bring you on? Anthony can rabble a bit for it, for sure. My internet's piece of crap tonight, Lynette, so I'm only getting bits and pieces of what you're saying. Oh, shit, one. Sorry about that, Lynette. Ramble. McLean, hi. Okay, so a lot of people are struggling with internet. Bubbles, do you want to come on and say anything, or shall I bring Anthony on? Anthony, let's bring you on. Can you hear me, or can you speak? Anthony, I think I've unmuted you. Unmute. And this time I have not got my earphones in, so can anyone else hear Anthony? No, okay, so it's not just me this time, for a change. Not yet. Anthony, have you got your earphones in? Okay, hang on. Right, we're hanging on, Anthony. Anthony says hang on, so we'll hang on for a moment. The drama is the suspense. He's trying to create the suspense. Okay. Maybe you just need to reboot your laptop or PC. Anthony Marceau Cook. Kevin, what are you on about? So, he was the mime artist. I didn't know that. Okay, all right, cool. Okay, so whilst Anthony is getting that sorted out, for me, I mean, there's no doubt about it. His story was incredibly traumatic. I want to read something. I want to read something that really. Can I invite you again? Okay, I'll come back to that. Just give. You should be able to talk. Allowed to talk. You should be able to talk now, Anthony.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, cool bananas. All right.
Oh, cool.
So, what do you think?
Well, when I read it, it was probably I was going through a lot of change, and my mind was very open. I was going through life-changing stuff, and I also, at the same time, I read a book by Frankl called Provocative Therapy, and it sort of challenged some of my preconceptions about therapy and counselling.
Yeah.
Where you would go. I mean, if you might have read Provocative Therapy or some of that stuff. If you haven't,
no,
then you certainly,
yeah,
you have. Yeah. I was going to say, well, you certainly do practice a lot of it. It was where other models that I looked at seemed to rationalize dysfunctional behavior. So people might go, oh, right, okay, now I see why I'm a psychopath. Oh, okay, that's good. But it never challenged them to change. And I think an aspect, if you put it in the context of where Frankl was, then the only thing you could change was your mindset or your attitude, because everything else was outside of your control. So the emphasis, if you like, to be in control of everything that was inside your head to the extent that it could help you survive, because you didn't exist as an entity other than in your head. And that was it. So that was the only place you could survive. Perhaps you would connect to that with your childhood experiences. The safe place that you would go to was in your own head.
Was it my own head, or was it to a greater place?
Well, in my model of the world, they're one and the same thing.
In your
place, in my model of the world, they're one and the same thing.
Okay.
That greater place is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore potentially physically in your head rather than material. But what struck me about the book was I've just picked it up as I was moving rooms. I lost the. Let me just find the page. But firstly, it was how choice was seemingly taken away from you when actually it wasn't. But there's a line here about logotherapy defocuses all the vicious circle formations and feedback mechanisms which play such a great role in the development of neuroses. Thus, the typical self-centeredness of the neurotic is broken up instead of being continually fostered and reinforced.
Yep. Running the story.
So that kind of struck me. But also more recently, reading it in the sense of, or in conjunction more recently with a book by Gladwell called Outliers, where he talks a lot about the environment and that somehow the notion of luck, but the environment also has an impact on our performance.
Yeah.
And he gives various examples. You may have read the book. I'm sure many people have. And for example, Bill Gates at MIT was the only one with access to, the computer room. So he was able to spend hours and hours and hours, 10,000 hours probably, doing what he did. But it could have been, but that was because the environment afforded him that opportunity. It wasn't necessarily something he created for himself. However, you and I would also say, well, you create your own environment. And that's what Frankl did, but he did it in his head. So I found a lot of the psychiatric stuff and the logotherapy stuff at the time, because it's a long time ago. I was a much younger man. And I found it a really heavy read. Obviously, the graphic stories around the concentration camps were quite harrowing. But essentially, being open to change and being open to a much more provocative approach to change, where you don't have to keep being the person that you are. You can change and be somebody else, but you don't have to change your personality in the process. And so it just struck me at the time where I had a very open mind. I was going through life-changing experiences, and it was one of a number of books that I think I probably read it in a day, Judy. As you said, it was hard to put down.
Yes, yeah.
And a real page turner. But again, in conjunction with stuff like Farrelly, I just found it a fascinating read. And finally, and I'll stop rambling, if you put it in the context of what we're going through today, where we're all in our own little prison camp, what sort of, without being political, but what sort of winds me up, I know that some very, very difficult times out there for many, many people.
Yeah.
Tragic times. But when the ministers come on for the daily briefing and appeal to the public to stay in at Easter in a very general way, but then they say, look, we know this is really hard. And I sit there and think, is it really that hard? And I'm not talking about extreme cases. There are people who've lost loved ones and who have lost jobs and who are genuinely struggling. But there will be a large proportion of the population who are just having a bad time because they feel like they've lost a bit of control.
Yeah.
And actually, you get that control back by dealing with it and sorting your head out. If you told people of my mother's generation to stay at home, oh, this is we know it's hard, she'd say, what do you mean this is hard? This is nothing compared to what we went through. So just deal with it, toughen up. And I appreciate that's an extreme or it might come across as an extreme statement. I'm not trying to be controversial, but certainly for perspective in today's challenging environment, it's a fantastic book to read. Just for pure perspective, relative to anything, I would recommend it. So that's the end of my little ramble. So I'll be quiet.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, but I think here's the challenge, Anthony. Here's the challenge: is that we have gone, as a society, we have gone down. So there's this thing called Sunday neurosis that actually Viktor Frankl talks about in his book. And again, it comes from an existential vacuum. And I think when he wrote the book, it was a concept that maybe some people, it would have been, and then the extent of which people possibly would have felt it would have been on a Sunday, all right, after a really busy week, and you've got just calm, and there's like a void, right? Whereas I think now with society having gone to the extent it has become more of an existential vacuum than ever before. And so that leads to depression, aggression, and more importantly, addiction. Not just addiction in terms of cocaine and drugs and stuff like that, but addiction to consumerism and immediate gratification, where we're in pursuit of pleasure with no pain. And we're trying to devoid ourselves of tension, which is impossible. Because when you understand the meaning that for your existence, you understand that it equally requires tension as pleasure, and in that existential vacuum, you actually start going to more of the primitive forms of survival, which means we're in our head more and more, predator prey more and more. And I think what's happening now is we're reacting. It is very hard. It is very hard for people because of that existential vacuum, because that is now being exacerbated. They can't fill it. They can't fill that void with shops, with restaurants, with get-togethers, with doing whatever it is they want. We've got more freedom than we've ever had before in history of modern civilization. And I think that's why it's really, really hard. And I think that is one of the things that we need to bring up and become aware of and understand, reframe, take a step back and understand, okay, now, and start asking ourselves the question, well, is that actually the meaning that I want to apply to my life? It's not about the meaning of life, because the meaning of life assumes there's just one. There's not. There's 7 billion or 8 billion meanings to life right now, because that's the number of people in the world. So and now is the opportunity to sit back and say, what is the meaning I choose to apply? But the only way you're going to be able to do that is by understanding that you may not have control of your physical movements, but you have absolutely 100% choice. And I think that reading his experience in the concentration camp, that comes out extremely powerfully in that he never lost the understanding that he has choice. So, and I think that's why it's so hard for people today. And I think that's one of the benefits, potentially, if we wake up to it, in that we will see the extent of which we have been living in that vacuum.
Yeah, I think on a deeper level, and certainly some of the teachings that you do, is that also implies that all the choices that we had before this virus were ones that actually we weren't making. It was just stuff we did without a deliberate, conscious choice. And now, and it's like, well, how sad is that? You're either living somebody else's dream, or you're just going along with the flow, or you're just filling your life with stuff, consumerism, materialism, as you just said. And actually, you can make better choices.
Yeah.
And
in that space, what you do is you subjugate yourself to the agendas of society and the agendas of politics or celebrities or whatever other people's agendas are. You by not being conscious of the choices that you make on a moment by moment basis, you're subjugating yourself, and therefore you're leaving yourself open for that vacuum.
Yeah.
And you fodder for that vacuum. Essentially, really, in its brutal terms, you're fodder. Don't know how more that's really.
I totally agree. It's like, it's one of those, you're potentially living one of those lives where you look back and go, well, wow, was that it? How much of that was down to me? You know, and the less ownership you're taking, the more you're subscribing to the things you've just talked about. Whereas if it's now just you in your home with your mind, I mean, Christ, we've got the internet, for goodness sake, we've got television, we've got FaceTime, we've got more than enough stuff to do. But just in a slightly different format, and to be honest, it's going to be, I don't know, hopefully, I mean, it's probably going to be months, not weeks, but it's going to be for a few months, with certain limitations. But you know, the choice is still what, you know, your performance or your existence still depends on the very next thing that you do. So you can either go out for a walk or go out for a jog for 20 minutes, or you can open another bottle of Chablis, you know, and it's up to you.
Yeah.
But you still have that choice, even though perceptibly it's perhaps a bit more limited than it was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's just changed form.
Yeah.
So, cool. Excellent. Thank you for that, Anthony. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to a human being.
It's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah, that's probably what I could become even more verbose in the current climate. So I will definitely mute now.
Cool. Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to say anything? I think what Anthony has said is incredibly powerful and very vital. And I think what Anthony and I just finished up with there is very important, and I just want to go back on it, and that is nothing's changed. Nothing has changed, except a sense of freedom, more places for us to spend money. As Anthony said, perceptible. It's really so small that the actual, when you drill it down, very small has changed. Now, obviously, Anthony is, as he said, and I completely concur with that, is not to diminish the real drama and trauma of those who are, one, suffering with the virus, two, who've lost people with the virus, or three, people who've lost jobs. Okay, we're not undermining or diminishing the trauma around that, but that's a small percentage of people, and they're going through that journey. That's their path to take, and they need to do what they need to do. Okay, but for as a society, we would be wise to take on a different perspective on what's going on. And all it is, if we take a step back and allow ourselves to look at it from a logotherapy perspective, and look at it from a perspective of, okay, what is the meaning we're going to apply to this, and look at, because nothing ceases to exist, it only changes form. Right? When you start looking at everything changes form, it doesn't cease to exist. Right? So if you feel that you've lost freedom, if you feel that you've lost, you have a vacuum that you used to fill. So where can you fill it now? You have a choice. Or where is it being filled, but you're not willing to acknowledge it? You know, there's two very distinct things here. Okay, if you believe that there's a vacuum, there's a loss, that you've lost something, something's been taken from you, right? So yes, we can't do X, Y, and Z that we could do a couple of weeks ago. So what was it? What was that feeling? What did it give you? And where are you getting it now? Because nothing ceases to exist, it only changes form. And if you step back and look at it from that perspective, with a balanced perspective rather than a charged, polarized perspective, you will actually see where you have it now. So it doesn't necessarily require a shift in your values, Kevin. Not always. Some people will most definitely experience a catastrophic shift in values in this process. Make no mistake, some people will, but not everybody. And it doesn't have to be, because what Kevin said, it requires a shift in your values. It doesn't have to. You can still have fitness, say, for example, as number one value, and earning money as a number two value, or building wealth as a number two value, and family as number three. They could still stay in place. Nothing's changed. You can still have fitness as number one. You can still exercise. I guarantee you, like, you can go out and exercise, run, and I mean, outside our place, we see people all the time with all sorts of weights and stuff, doing all sorts of exercising. So it's not that it requires a shift in values. It requires a shift in how you perceive you can fulfill your values. So I think that's more of the important point to bear in mind. I just want to get my mouse to go back up to some of the questions. I think that's the more important thing. Amex bill has plummeted, mine too. So I'm not getting my Avios. So for sure, we're saving a lot of money. So there's an example, like, how much money are you saving at the moment? Oh my gosh, how much, unless you're living alone, I mean, how much more connection have you got with family? And how much are we now utilizing internet and online forums constructively rather than absent-mindedly, like, for example, having Zoom meetups and these sort of webinars and stuff like that. Things have changed, but just changed form. And that's why I said, when we get through this at the other end, it won't be, this is going to have left an indelible mark on our psyche. Let's make no mistake. And when we get through it, the world will be different. It won't be better, it won't be worse, it'll be different. It will just have changed form. Now, it depends on your perception and the meaning you apply to things, and your ability to actually stand back and see, well, how has it changed form, and how does that serve my values, and how can I apply this new form to take my life forward? Does that make sense? So I think if you've experienced any stage of your life, a lockdown in any way, disability, abuse, loneliness, etc., you'll be able to handle this period way better than others. Cheryl, yeah, well, yeah, Nia. Yeah, Nia. And I'm going to say yes, no. The reason why I'm going to say two reasons for that. One, yes, like from my own personal experience, in like 7,300 days, thereabouts, roughly, shoot me for 50 or so days here to either side of that. But I can say, yeah, I've been there, done it. I know what it feels like, and I can see the benefits. Equally, I also know the harshness behind it. Okay, also know the harshness. I also know the difficulty. I know, and it will, because that experience would have left an indelible mark of my psyche. It's bringing that up for me again. So there's benefits, and it would be foolish of me to say, oh yeah, 100%, I so was there, it's all fine, it's all benefits, there's no drawbacks, it's absolutely 100%. That would be very foolish of me. I would be lying to myself and everybody else. So it's very important that no matter where you are in life, that you equally acknowledge that there's always benefit and drawbacks. Even if you've never experienced it before, this is a new experience. There'll be different benefits. So I think that's a very important way to see it as well. Yeah. Okay, so I feel lucky. Anthony, I feel lucky, a natural introvert, educated in inner mind control management. I feel equipped to cope. Yeah, no, totally, I agree with that. There is that. So yeah, okay, cool. I'm just going through those to see if there's anything. I want to read something from his book in a minute. Lindley, other than the massive knock in income, I must say I enjoy being on my own and catching up on all things. So here's my question to you, Lindley. Lindley, you're still on all panelists. Is that what you want? Just like, is that what you want? Because when you're on all panelists, no one else can see what you're writing. If you put all panelists and attendees in the drop-down box at the bottom, everyone else can see your comments. Well, Lindley, I am South African. That's why I would say Yarni, because I'm South African. Okay, so Lindley, you took a massive knock. I was actually thinking about you the other day, being a sound engineer. I can imagine, like, overnight, your work must have dried up. But the question I would love to ask you then is what you are enjoying in terms of the catching up on things and having time on your own. And in a lot of ways, we've gone back like 20, 30 years in a lot of ways to a much more slower, calm way of life. What value would you put on that? And does that match your income lost? What you perceive you've lost in income? Because remember what I said, nothing is lost, it just changes form. Nothing is gained, it's just changed form. So hopefully that makes sense. Pearl, who is Frank? I must have missed that one. Frank, Pearl, Frank, Mike, Frank, Viktor Frankl, is that what you mean, McLean? The author of the book? Yeah, the author of the book. Okay, so McLean, you say you disagree with Anthony. I think that you mean you're disagreeing with Anthony on some aspects of the lockdown due to the silent agenda of the government, which is planned and implemented. I will leave it there. Don't want to create noise. Yeah, aside from that, okay, so here's the important thing, McLean. It's actually irrelevant what the agenda is. The reality is this is what we're living with, all right? You know, if you want to fight that agenda, if that's high in your values, on anybody's values, they want to fight that agenda, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That still forms within accepting the reality of the situation that we're in, understanding that it's changed form. When you understand that you haven't changed, it's changed form, and you haven't lost anything, and you know it's just changed form, and then how you align that with your values and how you perceive and apply a meaning to that and perceive it from that place. If you believe that there's a hidden agenda and you're called to address it, you're called to call them out on it, you do it from that place and not a place that's polarized, and not a place that's coming from a place of fear, anger, rage, imprisonment. You know what I'm saying? So when you're able to deal with it from that, when you address or deal with absolutely anything from that balanced perspective, from that equilibrated state, from that understanding that, one, you're the cause of your effect, and two, that whenever something shifts, nothing, it's just changed form, and your ability to adapt and to see how you have equally gained and where you've equally gained, it to match up with the extent of the loss you've perceived. From that place, you are always unstoppable. You are the most powerful. You are in your executive center, as Dr. John DeMartini would say, or as I would say, your heart center. That's where you are. And there's where you're unstoppable, and you can create absolutely anything. So, so that what you're bringing up is it's dealing with the effect and not the cause. So you're able to deal with that once you've got the cause in place. Does that make sense? Yeah. As Anthony said, if the agenda is silent, how do you know what it is? You've created that yourself. Yeah, we could get really philosophical on that, for sure. One of the things I would absolutely love to read to you guys, and of all the about this whole book, this one thing meant so much to me, and I'll tell you why. Let me see now. Okay, so keep an open mind. Just listen to the words and don't try and second guess. Okay, so in front of me, a man stumbled, and those following him fell on top of him. The guard rushed over and used his whip on all of them. Thus, my thoughts were interrupted for a few minutes, but soon my soul found its way back from the prisoner's existence to another world, and I resumed talk with my loved one. I asked her questions, and she answered. She questioned me in return, and I answered. Stop! We had arrived at our work site. Everyone rushed into the dark hut in the hope of getting a fairly decent tool. Each prisoner got a spade or a pickaxe. Can't you hurry up, you pigs? Soon we had resumed the previous day's positions in the ditch. The frozen ground cracked under the point of the pickaxes, and sparks flew. The men were silent, their brains numb. My mind still clung to the image of my wife. A thought crossed my mind. I didn't even know if she were still alive. I knew only one thing, which I have learned well by now. Love goes very far beyond the physical person of the beloved. It finds its deepest meaning in his spiritual being, his inner self, whether or not he is actually present, whether or not he is still alive at all. It ceases somehow to be of importance. I did not know whether my wife was alive, and I had no means of finding out. During all my prison life, there was no outgoing or incoming mail. But at that moment, it ceased to matter. There was no need for me to know. Nothing could touch the strength of my love, my thoughts, my image of my beloved. Had I known then that my wife was dead, I think I would have still have given myself undisturbed by that knowledge to the contemplation of her image, and that my mental conservation with her would have been just as vivid and just as satisfying. Set me like a seal upon thy heart. Love is as strong as death. This intensification of inner life helped the prisoner find a refuge from the emptiness, desolation, and spiritual poverty of his existence by letting him escape into the past. When given free rein, his imagination played the past events, often not important ones, but minor happenings and trifling things. His nostalgic memory glorified them, and they assumed a strange character. Their world and their existence seemed very distant, and the spirit reached out for them longingly. In my mind, I took bus rides, unlocked my front door of my apartment, answered my telephone, switched on the electric lights. Our thoughts often centered on such details, and these memories could move one to tears. I wanted to read that to you because that struck me as so incredibly powerful. And I'll tell you why. And it speaks to something that Regina, you said earlier in your comments, which I read, I glanced through. You said your comment was that it was okay, he was an adult, therefore he had some level of understanding or was able to contextualize. Okay, and this paragraph or page and a bit I read, it speaks to that. Okay, he was able to hold on to memories. Okay, he was able to hold on to the love of his wife. It was bigger than his mortal body, and it's something that I always say. I would say that there is no challenge, there's no earthly challenge that you cannot thrive from. There's no earthly challenge that can break you. All right. There's a quote also by, I can't never say his name, by Nietzsche, 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 is he who has a way. What is it? He who has a way, or he who has a vision. No, he who has a way. There's, what is this? Sorry, guys, bear with me a second. He who has a way. Ah, yes, he who has a way to live for can bear almost anyhow. He who has a way to live for can bear anyhow. So in other words, he who has a vision, has a greater vision, can bear any challenge. And like for Frankl, holding on to the love of his wife, whether she was alive or dead didn't really matter. It was irrelevant because he was connected to something greater than the mortal body. All right, and his ability to withstand the horrors of the concentration camp, he held on to the beautiful little things. He held on to those beautiful little things, simply innocuous things, with such clarity. And here's the important part here, guys, is such clarity. Now, the reason why it touched me was that, and again, it speaks to your comment, Regina, is for me growing up, right, I didn't have those memories to hold on to, all right, because it was from when I was very young, and there was a lot of torture, a hell of a lot of torture. I would have you in tears in seconds with details of the source of torture that I went through, and some of it involved more than one person. It was gang torture on my body. It was horrendous. But what I held on to, which such absolute incredible clarity, were inane activities I would do when I escaped. Okay, simple act of crossing a road when I wanted to cross a road. A simple act of feeling the grass in my toes or the sand in my toes, a simple act of feeling the froth of the waves on my body, just those simple little things, the clarity of which I held on to, those simple little things, took me outside of my body, connected me to something way more powerful than my mortal body, that nothing could break it. Nothing could break my spirit. And I think, so it doesn't matter. We've all got that ability. It doesn't matter if you're an adult or you're a child. It doesn't matter what it is you're going through. And in that place, when you start to accept that place, you start to realize how actually powerful you really, really are. You start to see that, when you can get to that space, get into that place of infinite love, infinite gratitude, infinite possibilities, infinite sense of connectedness with the universe, you get your body just becomes just matter. Okay, it's really great matter, but it just becomes matter, and it becomes a tool. Your body is just merely a tool for your vision. That's all it is. But we make the mistake of doing it the other way around. We make the body everything when the body is not everything. Body is merely a tool, just like money is a tool. Does that make sense? Hopefully I've managed to explain that, and why I think what he's gone through, and from my perspective as a child, having gone through it, how powerful when you connect with the bigger, the bigger reality, the bigger universe. That it's all about how you perceive it, the meaning that you apply to it, and it's why for many years when I did escape and I was like, whoa, it was like a free chicken, like I just went mad, and I went through a pretty rough time. And I've always, and again, I think I mentioned it last week, I did a talk last year in Wales on this. I'd rather have the whole world against me than my own soul. When I got to a point, after I did escape, I was taking a lot of overdoses. My life was hell, even though on the outside, people were looking at me thinking, why would you do this? You've got everything. And I did. I had everything materially, had everything. People would break their right arm off for the life I had. It was freaking glorious. Except I had lost my spirit. I'd lost that connection with my spirit. And I was going from one psychotherapist to another, to another, to another, to another. It was just crazy, 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 right? And none of them could touch it. None of them could. All I was doing was relaying the fucking story, relaying that story over and over and over again. And it wasn't touching it. And none of them seemed to understand. I have no problem with what happened. The torture, that doesn't mean anything to me. They can't, you can whip me senseless as my mortal body, but you cannot you cannot touch my spirit. None of them were able to touch that. None of them were able to understand or comprehend that until that last day when I took an overdose. And I woke up in intensive care and I had an epiphany. And that epiphany was I'd lost connection with my spirit. And the moment I had that epiphany and I started that journey back, my life changed. My life completely changed. So whilst I had everything in my life, I had absolutely everything. I had wealth, I had sports, I had success, I had friends, I had parties, you name it, I had it. But it came at a cost because I was constantly seeking outside of myself. I was in this existential vacuum place, all right, where it was like this bottomless well that I kept seeking to fill, and it wouldn't get full. It wouldn't get full. Of course, it's not going to get full because all I'm trying to fill is a mortal body. All I'm trying to fill is a mere tool. It's like trying to feed a pickaxe. Really, it's trying to give nourishment to a bloody pickaxe, literally. Think about it like that, right? Our body is nothing more than a pickaxe. It's a tool. The reality of who we are is our ability to connect with our heart, our spirit, our soul, and the universe around us, and the meaning it is for our life. And there's no one meaning to life. It's unique to every single one of us. And I wrote something down here, and I just want to go and look for it. So here it is. I wrote it down yesterday. The true meaning of life is to be discovered in the world rather than within. When you start looking for and finding or exploring that construct of the meaning of your life, all right, the meaning and the meaning you apply to life, that's where you get into the self-transcendence of human existence, where you are literally directed to serve. Now, some people, I'm going to just read this, what I wrote down, and I'll expand on it, where you're directed to serve, to provide meaning or to fulfill. The more you do that, the more you forget yourselves by giving of yourself to others. And you are catalyst or a conduit for others to find that self-transcendental state. That is where you start becoming more and more self-actualized. Now, people talk about the seeking of self-actualization. If you ever think you've got to that self-actualization state, well, then you're going to die, okay? Because that's it. There's nothing beyond there, right? So it's self-actualization is an ever-moving target, right? It's something that we'll always be working towards. It's an ever-moving target. But there are three ways in which you get to that place. And one of them is creating a certain work or a deed. It is experiencing something or encountering someone, or it's an attitude you take towards an unavoidable suffering. So there's very clear ways in which you can actually go down this road. So some people say, yeah, all right, okay, I don't have any great meaning or vision. I have no great purpose. Like, for example, Rose Kennedy, she was asked, what does she believe her purpose in life was? And she said it was to raise a family of world leaders. Well, she did that. And some people say that they don't have a vision as big as that. You know, can you imagine what Tesla's vision was, or Edison's vision? Elon Musk's vision, you know, what his, some people don't say that they don't have anything as big as that. But it doesn't have to be that massive and big and public. You can reach this state in your own micro network by being a parent, a spouse. You will get out of your own way to serve within the confines of your family, within your community. You know, it doesn't have to be something that's, you know, life-changing, like Gandhi, like Nelson Mandela. Does that make sense? And I think people often make the mistake of, because they can't see themselves in that role of, you know, therefore they don't have their meaning is not as important because it's not a massive, it's not going to create massive paradigm shifts on a global scale, but will create paradigm shift within their own family unit or community. It's not about what, it's about the how. Right? Does that make sense? Am I making sense, or am I speaking to myself? Let me know, does that make sense? Yeah, okay, cool. 100%, perfect sense. I love that what you said there, Anthony. It's hugely important point, actually quite obvious, it totally is, but often missed. And it's the simplest things that are often missed. So, yeah. And that's the crazy thing. It's the simplest things that are often missed. Cool. The melody of music helped me a lot. Helped me, not the words, but the melody. Yep, music, absolutely. Music's very powerful, Regina. So Pearl, I think you asked, okay, how did you have a vision being a child, Judy? Was it from reading so much? I know you mentioned you were given books. Okay. One of the, okay, it's the chicken and egg, right? I couldn't read or write or anything until I was about 12 or thereabouts. And I pretty much taught myself. But I think the visions, you know, what reading did, or studying and researching did for me during those years, it fed my vision. The vision came first. Okay, I can say to you pretty much the vision came first. And where does that vision come from? And guys who are on the boot camp, you will understand what I'm talking about here. Hopefully you will anyway. Because when you're connected in with that greater intelligence, with that greater universe, you're downloading information all the time. You have access to infinite information. You have access to all the information that is available on the internet. You can connect into it. And I naturally did. You know, I taught myself to play violin, for example, without ever reading music, to the point that when I did Escape, I joined an orchestra. All right. And that's just one example of the things that I did. So you can actually connect in with universal intelligence in that state when you are outside of your body. When you understand that your body is a mere tool, you connect in with something that's really much greater than what's in here. This is just a conduit. The brain is just a conduit. Okay, when you connect into the universal intelligence and allow it to flow through, uninhibited by the ego, uninhibited by the id or the superego, right? You allow it to flow through to your heart and allow then to your body to be the instrument. You're unstoppable. There's nothing you can't achieve. And that's the gift that we've been given now. The gift we've been given now through this experience is that what is being highlighted to us, what we are being forced to face, is this existential vacuum. Now we have a choice. Do we look to change the form of how we fill it, because we can't fill it with what we used to fill it with. So do we change form and fill it with just as low priority shit? Or do we look at it and say, okay, well, what meaning do I want to apply to my life? Does that make sense? We've got a phenomenal opportunity. That's why I've been saying from day one, this is the time to reevaluate. This is the time. The part that's hard is being okay to sit in that vacuum, or as I've said over the past couple of weeks, the silence, to be okay to sit in it. Be okay with the uncertainty, because part of avoiding that vacuum will be the seeking of certainty. And the only certainty we have right now is the drama, the fear, the panic, the shit. Okay? Be okay with the uncertainty. Be okay with sitting in uncertainty, with not knowing what's going to come out of this, until you find the meaning and you start living that. Okay? Okay, so Kevin, that was a big part. That was a big part of the boot camp for me. Yeah, the universe is a transmitter. Our heart is the tuner receiver. Perfect. Yeah. So McLean, sounds like you had a number of inner talent that you connect with heart as well as the universe. Yeah. I think I was. I was going to say. I think I was very lucky, right? To Anthony's point, but we do make our own luck. I really do believe that. And in some ways, it could be said, on some levels, right? Here's another thing. I was very, I was very selfish, right? Very, very selfish, that no fucker was breaking my spirit. Okay. So there's not, you can, another thing, especially boot campers, read Gordon Albert, right? Read up Gordon Albert. I was reading up his stuff recently, and he's the guy. Remember I said we have there are 4,500 known traits, guys. Many of you guys will have heard me saying that. There are minimum 4,500 known human traits. And we have every single one of them in one form or another that are demonstrated or they show up in accordance with our values when our values are supported or challenged, right? And to the extent of which our values are supported or challenged. And Gordon Albert, actually, he did it in the 1930s. Was it the 1930s? I think it was the 1930s. He extrapolated all these traits out of the English dictionary. And he's known as the trait psychologist. So it'd be interesting to read up on some of his material. Sure, Anthony, selfish is often an external judgment. Focus on oneself doesn't equal selfish. No, I know what you're saying. Completely understand what you're saying. It is a selfish as a judgment word. Make no mistake. Self-preservation is the word I would have been wiser to use. Self-preservation was so high. I had a very high level of self-preservation. That's actually what the word I would have been wiser to use. So Anthony, I found that alone in lockdown, it's actually very difficult to fill your time at low priority shit. Yeah, one runs out of stuff to do very quickly. That's for sure. 2 points which I find quite powerful of the book. If one cannot change the situation which causes his suffering, he can at least choose his attitude. Yeah, and on that point, Nanette, if one cannot change the situation which causes the suffering, then when you reframe it, it's no longer suffering. Okay, that's the important point here. Is that it's not to change your attitude for the sake of change your attitude and change your attitude in the suffering. When you change your attitude, you apply a different meaning to it, it's no longer suffering. Does that make sense? That's a very important point. And the second, he spoke of a man who broke his neck at a young age. I broke my neck and it didn't break me. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So it's important. It's the same with here now. Like what we're in now, we could see it as suffering, as being trapped, being imprisoned, being locked down. I mean, there's two things going on right now that is not helping, and that is on a macro level, on a institutional level. These two things are being used on an institutional level. And one is the word social isolating. Okay, whether there was an agenda behind that is one thing, or another thing. But really, what we're actually doing is physical isolating. Okay, social isolating. It rips our core apart because we are social beings, right? So in actual fact, it would be wise to rephrase that to physical isolation or physical distancing, rather than social. And the second one is lockdown. Okay, whether that is deliberate on an institutional level or not, it's irrelevant. The fact is that those two phrases, powerful words that are, those two words will be possibly leave more of an indelible sort of scar on our psyche than the actual virus. Okay, lockdown. Oh my gosh, couldn't they come up with a better word, a more supportive word? That word in itself creates angst, doesn't it? It's got a lot of energy sort of behind it. So it's so important to understand the language that you use as well. 100%, Kevin. Illustrates what you say to us about language. 100%, and how we use it and why it's important. The language you use, not language as in which language, like is it French, English, Italian, whatever. It's the words that you use is so important, and it is the biggest giveaway. So it's a really useful tool because it's the biggest giveaway to knowing and understanding what you are thinking, what you are believing, and what is in your unconscious, subconscious mind. It would have been nicer had they called it like something like you're saying, Lily, stay at home or something. Yeah, anything else but lockdown. So Regina, I think page 96, the lady seeing the beauty in the tree, seeing the beauty creation. Yeah, I agree. I've said this to family members. Yeah, well, it's one thing I've never lost is that the simplest little things. As I've always said, these guys are sick of me saying it. Seagulls. When I hear seagulls, to me, that's just freedom. And no matter what I'm going through, no matter what I'm doing, no matter how down I might be, I hear seagulls straight away. It's just makes everything right. Just, it's beautiful. It takes me back to myself. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, I think, Paul, I think it had to sound harsh to get the point across to people. Yeah, maybe, Paul, maybe, absolutely. But whatever the agenda is, it's irrelevant. It's just, they're just like, that's partly why people are finding it so hard, is those two. But you might be correct. You might be absolutely correct. Okay, anything else? Anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Regina, so you're thinking of me yesterday, you saw a single seagull on my walk in the beautiful sunshine. I actually saw a article, and this is not so nice, of a seagull eating a baby bunny rabbit whole and alive. Jeez, do you imagine what size he was? I mean, like, and I was thinking, oh my God, and I love these things. It's all balance. It's all balance. There's an so Anthony, there's an aspect to that. Oh, Paul. So Anthony is responding to Paul's comment. There's an aspect to that having to be direct to the lowest common denominator. Sounds harsh, but I agree. Yeah. I agree with Anthony. It's not selfish to live as you want, but to expect others to live as you wish. Yeah. Yeah, 100%, Paul. Totally, 100%. We can never expect anybody to live outside of their values, ever. Not even your partner, not even your partner of 20 years. Doesn't matter. You cannot expect anybody to live outside of their values. Yeah, that's really good one, Pearl. Well done. Well done. I forgot about that, actually. So Pearl said, I loved his comment. This is Viktor Frankl's comment about living as if you were living for a second time. Yeah. So imagine that what we have today was in the past, and we've got a new opportunity. that is what I would call a really cool hack. It's a good way to look at it. Yeah. I think that is a very good way to be, and a very good way of doing it. Yeah, I think that's really, really good. I'm glad you brought that up, Pearl. I actually completely forgot about that. And I think because a lot of people will think, how do I do it? But that's certainly a really good way of doing it. So it's a really good way of reframing, a really good way of starting to look at to reevaluate your life. And, so imagine you're coming at, this is your second chance. And what we are going to now today, what we've got today is actually the past. We get to recreate. So I think it's very powerful. Cool. Anything else? Was this useful, guys? Did you find today useful? Cool. So there is another book, but I'm not sure. Is it? I can't find it now. Give me a sec. No, I can't find it now. So there's a book that I was thinking, I just don't know if it's too technical. I must have put it somewhere. Erich Fromm. I love his work. I will post it up later on. Maybe we could look at that for 2 weeks' time. It would probably be too heavy to do in 1 week. It's not a big book, it's quite a small one, but it's it might be a bit heavy going. But maybe we'll do that for 2 weeks' time. And next week, just get on and chat. What do you think? Give me a thumbs up if you think that's a good idea. Anthony. Oops, hold on. Where's he gone? Where's everyone gone? Oh, the problem with the chat is it flies. As everyone puts in their comments, it flies. Yes, very Anthony, we rely on you to capture the hearts and minds as usual. I wonder why Jesus Unconscious pushed that book to the fore. Yeah, it was really weird, but there are no mistakes. As for Kevin suggestion, I've been listening to Intelligent Investor, Benjamin Graham, plenty of time, cool. Thank you, enjoy the rest of Easter, absolutely. Sounds good. Okay, cool, excellent. So that's good. But next week we'll just get together and we'll just chat, okay? And then 2 weeks time, I'm going to suggest this book. I'm going to have a look at it first, okay? Another look at it. I don't think it's too technical. I think it's like it's worth reading. It's not more technical than reading Viktor Frankl, I don't think. Erich Fromm. Erich, he is Austrian or Swiss, I can't remember. And it's ERICH. CFROMM, I think it is. So, but the name of the book I will put in the trading community group and in the Pogo Traders. I'll put it everywhere. I'll let you know. All right, guys, take care. Have a fantastic Easter Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope you get chocolate. I hope I get chocolate too. I haven't yet. All right. Take care, guys. Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony, for your input as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.